Today, he's well known by Canadians from coast to coast, but when he was 17, he barely knew himself. 5 months living on a Cree trapline in northern Quebec taught him things about life and his Indigenous identity that would shape everything that came after. He is Duncan McCue, a much admired CBC radio host, and he tells that story in his book, The Shoe Boy, a Trapline Memoir. And it's a pleasure to welcome Duncan McCue from his office in Toronto to our airwaves. Welcome, Duncan. How are you?
I'm doing well, Nev. How are you?
I'm okay. Great book, by the way. So 20 years ago, how did you end up spending almost half a year on a Cree trapline in northern Quebec?
It was such an important journey for me, and it's something that ended up kind of really taking. It became a critical part of my education. We had moved up to Sassabee, which is a little small village on the Quebec shore of James Bay, when I was 12 or 13. My dad started working with the Cree school board, and so we had been living in James Bay for about 5 years. When I graduated from high school, my dad approached me and said, "Would you be interested in taking a year off, not going to university, but spending time out on the trap line?" And I said, "Absolutely," because living in James Bay, I had started to learn some hunting skills, and I really enjoyed being out on the land with the Cree. I'm a Anishinaabe from Southern Ontario, and grew up a somewhat urban kid. And the Cree, when we moved to James Bay, took it upon themselves to teach me how to hunt. I wasn't a great hunter, but I really enjoyed being out on the land. So the opportunity to go out in the bush for an extended period of time really appealed to me, and so that's how I got introduced to Robbie Matthew Sr., who I ended up spending 5 months with way out in the bush on his trap line.
Having the gift of hindsight, what would you say in this moment was probably the most important lesson that you learned during your time on the trap line?
Oh, there were so many lessons now. I think that I had hoped that I might learn how to hunt. I mean, that was the simple. I was a terrible hunter. The Cree took me out to hunt geese during the migration north and south. The Cree village is just empty. The goose hunting is a really important part of Cree culture, and so I had gone out on the semi-annual goose hunt every year with a Cree family, the Pachanos. But I wasn't a very good hunter, so I hoped that when I got out there that I might improve my skills a little bit. Uh, Robbie certainly taught me that. I mean, Robbie's family sustained themselves from the food that they gathered from the land, and so that meant fish. It meant rabbits, small game like wood grouse, large game like caribou and bear. So I certainly learned some tricks when it comes to hunting, but I got so much more than that from Robbie. Just spending time with him. This is a man who had spent his entire life growing up in this particular area of Io Itchi, which is what the Cree call their land. He knew this hunting territory like the back of his hand. He had been passed on the knowledge of the land from his father, from his grandfather, et cetera, et cetera. And what I really learned from Robbie was more a way of looking at the land, and how the land was so deeply connected to everything that makes us Indigenous. Whether it was about our names, whether it is about our respect for elders, whether it is about the way that we look at animals and harvesting. So much of it I ended up kind of taking in by osmosis from Robbie Matthew, and I'm so grateful for that.
Before you went to the trap line, you actually spent time with the family in their home in an urban setting. Robbie, his wife Sally, his son Bruce. You listened to heavy metal music and country music in the basement. What would you say were the differences when they were in that urban setting when you compared it to when they were on the trap line?
Yeah, Chisasibi is a reserve. At the time, back then, it was about 2,000 people. Now it's about, I think, 4,000 people. It's a fairly large Indian reserve. When I first arrived in Chisasibi, I actually didn't know the Matthews family. I hadn't met them before, and though I'd lived in Sasabi for almost 5 years, living in their home before we went out to the Trapline was my first introduction. And you mentioned Bruce. Bruce was close in age to me, a little bit older, and I ended up staying in his bedroom while we waited for a float plane to go out to the hunting cabin. And Bruce introduced me to heavy metal, Iron Maiden, and Steve Earle, and that kind of thing. But he also, we spent some time hanging out in the village, and frankly spent some hard time drinking as well. He took me out and introduced me to his drinking buddies, and that's it's a hard part of Indigenous life in this country is watching our youth who don't have a lot to do at times, and watching the frustration and the boredom that they experience. And so for Bruce, who out on the land is incredibly competent, knowledgeable, skilled when it comes to how to survive and how to live on his own in the bush, in Chisasibi, in the village, he found himself at loose ends without any work and having finished school, and unfortunately we spent a couple of days of hard drinking, and that too. I mean, it was almost a relief to get out into the bush to see what an impact it had on Robbie's sons, to be able to have that freedom of being out in the wilderness.
Why was it a relief?
Because because I'm well accustomed to seeing the challenges that our people experience on reserves. I've seen that my whole life. Whatever Indigenous community I have visited, I've seen the impacts of colonialism, whether it's the substance abuse problems, whether it's sexual abuse, whether it's the dropout rates at schools. I know full well what the hardships are of on First Nation communities. So it was a relief to go out in the bush and to see that Robbie's teachings, that the way that he had been brought up was still so intact. This is not living as a trapper is not a fairy tale, and it's not a part of our history books. There are Indigenous people right across this country who continue to sustain themselves from the land, and it's an important part of our economies. It's an important part, and it's a critical part of our culture. So seeing that, being with Robbie Matthews Sr. and his wife Sally, and seeing them practice life on the land, that's why it was a relief, because all of a sudden so much of who I was as a young Indigenous teenager began to make a lot more sense.
You write to evaluate hunting and trapping through a purely economic lens is to fundamentally misunderstand its importance to the Cree way of life. I'm guessing, is that what you mean by that, or do you mean something else?
What I was referring to there was that it's almost impossible for a native or a non-native trapper to make a living off of purely selling furs. And the price of fur has declined so dramatically that it would be very difficult to be able to sell enough fur, and it would be frankly harmful to the environment to try to sell enough fur to sustain yourself on the land. So I mean, on the one hand, there's a modest income from living a trapping lifestyle, but there is so much more reasons that the Cree continue to pursue that lifestyle. And the example that I gave in the book is the walking out ceremony.
Mm.
When a young Cree child is able to walk for the first time, they practice what's called the walking out ceremony, and it's a beautiful ceremony. Now the young toddler is dressed up in very beautiful regalia, and the parents walk them around, and they carry young girls carry an axe or a knife, a wooden axe or a wooden knife. Young boys carry a wooden rifle. To symbolize the what they'll be growing up into, and then they walk around a pole, and then they're led into the midwap, which is a teepee in English, to meet the elders and their family who make a big fuss about them. What the importance of this ceremony is that right from an early age, Cree youth are taught that their future, the what they should be aspiring toward, is being connected to Io-Ichi. They need to have that connection to the land. And so even if they end up working in a desk job, an office job, for example, Cree, right throughout the Cree nation, still have really close connections to that hunting lifestyle, whether it's going out fishing on weekends, whether it's going out for goose break when the geese are migrating. It's just such an important aspect of the cultural life of being Cree.
I want to talk to you about some history. How did the James Bay Hydroelectric project in the 1970s change things for the Cree in northern Quebec?
It was a dramatic change, Nam. I mean, the side to go back for those who aren't familiar with the area, in the 1970s, the Quebec government announced that it would begin damming several of the rivers that flow into James Bay, starting with what the Cree know as Chisasibi, now known as La Grand Riviera, which is a massive river. It was a multi-billion-dollar hydroelectric project back in the 70s that Quebec absolutely was tying to its own nationalistic dreams. It wanted economic independence, and it wanted to sell that power and harness the power of the North to sell to primarily the northeastern United States. To accomplish to get the amount of power that they were hoping for, they flooded vast tracts of Io-Ichi, covering up many families' hunting territories, the places where their people were buried, and with almost no consultation, and the environmental assessment standards of the 1970s were nothing like they are today. So it was a gigantic project that altered the landscape dramatically of northern Quebec. Not only did it build these massive dikes that involved tons of flooding, and it changed the flow of some of the largest rivers in northern Quebec, but it also to get all of the equipment up there for this massive project, there was a huge road network that ended up being built to an area that was prior to that, only accessible by boat or float plane. And now all of a sudden, the 8 Cree communities were connected by a huge highway network, which had incredible impacts on their way of life.
Were there any benefits at all?
There were absolutely benefits. I mean, I think on the one hand, there were many families who still mourn today the fact that their hunting territories are underwater, and there are many Cree who think nostalgically back to the time before there was really close contact with the rest of Quebec. But absolutely, I mean, the Cree themselves, with the hydroelectric project looming upon them, signed the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement, which was the first kind of modern land claim agreement in Canada. There is lots to be desired, or lots that they were criticized for about that signing that agreement. But they ended up with a form of self governance, which the Crees speak highly of now today. I mean, they run their own school board, which is what my father went up to work for. They run their own health board. They are have an airline, for example. There are many forms of independent businesses that the Cree own and operate and hire their own people. So there have absolutely been benefits from what was a difficult situation for the Cree.
Within the book, you do talk about the history of that area, but you also talk about, because it is a memoir, you talk about some of the challenges that you were experiencing, the growth that you were having. But during those months of learning to hunt, you felt defeated at times, and you actually described yourself as a pretty lousy Indian. Why did you feel like that?
I was 17 years old. That's a difficult time for everybody. I bet it was difficult for you now, being that
Yeah.
age. I mean, it's you're dealing with pimples and being horny and hormones and all kinds of awful things when you're that age.
Yeah.
But on top of that, for me, I was trying to grapple with who I was as a young Anishinaabe, and then I'm also a Happer. My mother is white, has blonde hair and blue eyes. My father is an Anishinaabe from the Chippewas Georgina Island in southern Ontario. So I was dealing with a dual identity and trying to figure out, who I was as an Indian, if you will. Unfortunately, what I learned about being Indigenous in my grade school was a view of Indigenous people that was stuck in the past. We only learned I remember building teepees and canoes and with plasticine in my grade 4 class. That was about the only introduction that we had to Indigenous people in our classroom. In popular media, I was watching Peter Pan cartoons and Indians dancing around to drum beats in a kind of a racist pantomime. So I had all these competing popular notions of what Indianness meant, and then here I was going from southern Ontario, where I was the only native child at my school, to a community in northern Quebec where they called me Wamstagushio, which means white man, because I didn't speak fluent Cree. So all of these notions of indigeneity were competing in my brain as a 17-year-old, and I didn't know where I fit in. I really didn't, and so I that's what part of the journey was about, going out on the trap line, was hopefully that I would be able to learn more about my ancestors and my heritage. But I took some of the setbacks pretty hard as a young teenager, and when I failed, and I failed hard as a hunter. I thought, my God, I'm a lousy Indian, and the one of the scenes that I write about in the book, I actually had not told anybody. I had buried and forgotten in my memory, but I set out one day, determined to go and catch myself a beaver. Bruce and I had spotted a beaver pond a good half-day hike away from our hunting cabin, and I decided that one day I was going to go and get that beaver on my own. I when you're hunting, when you're shooting beaver as opposed to trapping it, you only get one shot. The beaver they spook easily, and they'll disappear if you aren't successful. So I made my way out to the pond and sat there in the cold, waiting. Suddenly, the little beaver showed up, stuck his head and began swimming across the pond. So I got, took a deep breath, readied myself, took a shot, and I I missed by a mile now. Like I missed by a mile. It wasn't even close. So the beaver, went under the water and back into the lodge again. And I knew it was going to be a long, long walk back to the cabin. Uh, at As I started out on my walk, I guess it was being cold, being tired, being frustrated with myself. But I stopped on a hilltop and looked out over the land, and all of the discouragement, all of the frustrations that I felt, all of the challenges with my identity, it all seemed to kind of come to bear at that particular point. And I thought seriously about killing myself at that point. I had a rifle in that I was carrying, obviously, and I sat there for a good couple of hours and contemplated that. And like I said, Nam, I didn't tell anybody this. I didn't tell Robbie or Bruce that evening. I never told my parents. It wasn't until I sat down to write the book that I even remembered it. And that was it's an illustration of some of the challenges I was facing myself in terms of grappling with this. And I think that there are a lot of young Indigenous youth who go through the same thing. The examples that they are given, for the most part, in their schooling, is of white success. It is to aspire to the kinds of models of success that certainly the South but more particularly that white people pattern. And there aren't a lot of examples of that they're given in either their schooling or in popular media of what success looks like for Indigenous people. And so it can be confusing. And I often wonder if we did a better job of telling our young Indigenous people that they can be great, they can achieve greatness and success within our communities and within our own teachings and lifestyles, that maybe we wouldn't have the suicide problem that we see in so many communities.
It must mean a lot thank you, first of all, for sharing that. Because even in the book, you did write something that I've never considered, and we only have a few minutes, so I wanted to get a couple more questions in. But you did write, some studies suggest increased level of education may put Indigenous youth at increased risk for suicide. That's something that I've never, I didn't know. Why is that?
Yeah, it goes back to your earlier question. I mean, what I wonder is if we are teaching Indigenous youth with a curriculum that doesn't relate to their lives, that doesn't relate to the things that they know and that they experience in the norm. And so you asked about Bruce and the kind of transformation that he went through when he was living in Chisasibe on the reserve versus being out in the bush. I think that studies have shown that communities, that the First Nation communities that have strong self-governance, that have strong connections to their culture and language, and that have some level of self-determination when it comes to their activities on the land, they don't have a suicide problem. And so if we're able to connect Indigenous youth to the land, whether it's going out in hunting camps in Io-Itchi, or whether it's going on canoe journeys on the West Coast in British Columbia, whatever that particular culture of the First Nation may be, I think it's really important that our youth have a strong connection to their where they come from, so that they will know where they're going in the future.
You in the book, you make fun of yourself a lot with your hunting skills, and you said that you couldn't.
I had to. I'm really not a very good hunter.
Well, when you describe yourself, you decide you can't hunt you can't hunt in the bush, but you became a hunter of a different sorts, which is that of stories.
Yes.
In your position, you're one of the most well-known journalists across Canada in all disciplines. Do you ever find it difficult, emotional work to do when you are covering stories and some of the context is missed?
Some of the context is missed. Yeah, it's one of the biggest complaints that our Indigenous audiences have about our journalism, Nam, is that so often when we go to report on, particularly on tragedies or crises in First Nation communities, whether it's a suicide crisis, whether it is a child welfare crisis, whether it is houses burning down, you name it. When news crews head off to report on these tragedies, they often miss the deeper context of the story. And I understand why. I'm a working journalist. I understand that it's difficult to pack so much information into a 2-minute television story or a 1 minute 10 radio story, a 700-word online article, but we have to do a better job as journalists of trying to educate Canadians about the colonial history that got us into this situation in the first place. We need, because so many Canadians, unfortunately, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, have not had an opportunity to learn that history in our classrooms. And this is what the Truth and Reconciliation Commission pointed out. This is why the Truth and Reconciliation Commission said that media have to be part of reconciliation in this country. And part of it is exactly what you mentioned, is teaching Canadians the context of why First Nations have, for example, such there are so many First Nations that have undrinkable drinking water, for example. Why the history that has led up to the current slate of problems that face so many First Nation communities.
Duncan, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Congratulations on the Massey Fellowship. I have to admit some professional jealousy. You can write, you broadcast. What can you not do?
What I can't do is be in the studio there with you. I wish I could. I mean, look at me. I'm stuck in this little tiny office in the CBC. I wish I could be there in the studio with you now.
Well, hopefully we'll see each other in real life soon. Thanks again, Duncan. Congratulations on everything.
Miigwech. Take care.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.